Hello, and thank you so much for joining us for Joy Church's online service. We're so glad that you're joining us today.
Definitely.
If you want to find a little more information about Joy Church or some of our current events, you can always follow us on social media on either Facebook or on Instagram, and you can also check out our website at joymedford.com.
Yeah, and if you want to give to Joy Church, support the things that we are doing, especially if this is your church home, then you can give on the joymedford.com website. You can also give via the PushPay app, and we thank you for your faithfulness to give into the house of the Lord. And right now, we're just so glad to be with you. Our service begins now.
We are launching into a series, and I teach my homiletics class not to have openings that are kind of like backdoor into something, but I want to talk to you about the importance of this subject that we're going to be embracing. And that is that we are God's team to proclaim. Not just shine your little light silently. Most people aren't asking why your minivan's cleaner than theirs. They don't care. But when they're in need, they need to hear the message of hope and life and Jesus. So we're embarking on a series that myself and different ones will be teaching called Personal. Tell the story, spread the word. One of the things that's happened since we haven't had free gatherings like we did in the past, we were seeing about 6 to 8 people per service on Sundays, per whole Sunday, first service and second service combined. We'd have about 6 to 8 people receive Jesus. And now, guess what we need to do? We need to say, if they can't come to us right now, we're going to go get them. And that's historic, the way the gospel's been spread. I'd like to tell you about 2 cousins. They're first cousins. One was my Aunt Shirley's son. His name is Marty. So his last name was Garner, but his mom was Shirley Schmelzer. And Marty had gone through a rugged divorce, living in Hayward, California, and was going to join his cousins up in Wasilla, Alaska. And he contacted me and he said, Stephen, I'm going to be coming through Portland, and could you baptize me? He said, I want a new life. My friend Edwin's with me, and we're going to be driving my truck with my stuff. I'm making a new life in Alaska. Marty came, and I believe you were with me. Kim and I and Marty and Edwin, we went out to the Columbia River in Portland off of Marine Boulevard, went out in the water, and we baptized him. Now, I'd like to tell you that Marty went up to Wasilla and plugged into a local church. We encouraged him to do that, but he joined Rick. And Rick, he was my Uncle Harold's son. They're about the same age, about 5 years younger than me. And they got into beer drinking 101. And so I want you guys to know this. We really encourage people to be drug-free and alcohol-free. Read my lips. God doesn't forsake you if you're a knucklehead and do dumb stuff. So one evening, Rick and Marty, I think, were working for the phone company up there, making some good money. And Marty was in a head-on collision with a diesel truck. Died instantly. Before he had died, occasionally he would call me, Stephen, I remember you baptizing me. He had a sincere faith. He didn't follow up on it. This is why we try to encourage people. Come to God's house. Go to small group. Get the word in your heart. Walk the walk. There's going to be a lot of people in heaven that didn't walk the walk, but they got born again. And that's why I keep telling this story. And so then the second one was Rick. And I was sharing an apartment in Portland with Rick's brother Dave, and so Rick came in an evangelistic fervor. I preached to my 2 cousins, and I baptized them in the swimming pool. Or excuse me, not swimming pool, in the bathtub. there was a period of time where I was baptizing all kind of people in the bathtub, you know. You never know who's going to be swimming in my bathtub, you know, if you came to my house, you know. I think I even rebaptized Kim just to make sure, you know, she is my new wife, and I had to make sure that her baptism was proper, you know. I've been personally baptized about 8 times, I think. I love it, you know. Maybe I ought to just take a shower. That might be the answer here. So, again, Rick went back up to his life in Anchorage. He retired from the phone company after having said goodbye to Marty. He and his wife, they bought a farm in an island just up a Alaska River. I've never even been to Alaska. But his phone service was such he had to have an amplifier, a repeater, so he could call. So his aunt, who's also my aunt, Aunt Shirley, called me one day and she said, "Stephen, Rick was just mentioning he wants to talk to you." And so I called him. She gave me his phone number. "Rick, this is Steve. How are you doing?" He said, "Well," he said, "you know, I'm retired now." And he said, "You know, I'm running, I believe he's growing camellias." And he said, "Stephen, I've never forgot you baptizing me." The Lord was reassuring me about these 2 boys because about a month later, my cousin Rick, I think, had a heart attack. He was down in Cabo and literally collapsed and drowned right there in, I think it's Modano Bay. I don't take personal evangelism as optional. Friends don't let friends drive without Christ. Friends don't let friends drive drunk. That's a good start. But you can be stone cold sober, and if you die without God, you spend eternity without God. Marty and Rick, hey guys, I still love you. And I'll see you. And all the sin, and all the distress, and all sorrow, and the tears will be wiped away. I have confidence when I pray. Sometimes when I pray, I say, "Lord, I have sought to give you what you want, which is souls. And all we need is 20,000 for the church, or all we need is," let me tell you something. When you are a person who's committed to serving the Lord and you're committed to telling the story, I'm going to train you in the next few weeks, or we're going to train you. Don't get in a weird fake evangelist voice to tell people the story. Scares people. "And I want you people to know." Whoa, dude's manifesting. Communicate who you are. Jesus made you to tell the story. He doesn't need you to be a fake Benny Hinn or fake me or anything. Because it really comes down to, do you know the story? "Stephen, I still remember you baptizing me." No knowledge that within a month, I would never talk to Rick again. What beautiful things. I didn't bring it up. He brought it up. Marty would bring it up. Marty's mom would bring it up. Now she's serving the Lord, and her husband, they're serving the Lord. We never know what the ripples are going to be when we love people enough. How about that person that lives next to you? "I don't know any of my neighbors." That shouldn't be a point of pride. You got to find a way to say something. Find a way to love. Wow. Okay. How many of you are motivated to listen a little bit? Years ago, my baby, Kim, about 30 years ago, she had an abscess in her lungs, and she was just nearly choking on blood. I called the ambulance. The good news is she made it. Yeah, she's right here. I called the ambulance and said, my wife's just spitting up blood and she's choking, and please help us. It's funny how humble you can be when you need help. I really don't believe in ambulance. I believe in ambulance. Get here, you know. And so all of a sudden, woo, sirens are coming, an ambulance shows up, the firemen are coming with their uniforms on, you know. And the police are there. I thought, you're not arresting her, are you? And so I found out that our city, and I assume that probably many major cities in the country, when you call for an emergency, they will send fire trucks, ambulance, and police. And I finally asked a first responder. I don't know if it was a policeman or if it was a fireman or whoever, or maybe I just had a dream. Saw this in no, I'm just teasing. I spoke to one. I said, why the parade? And the answer I thought was quite brilliant. Oftentimes, an ambulance alone could take care of the need. But what if the person's behind a locked door? That fireman's right behind us and he can take an axe and break that thing down. Or if they're up on a ledge, dangling from a tree, we might need ladders. Firemen are there. And what if the reason that 911 is called is because of a domestic violence situation? The policemen are there to keep order. In some neighborhoods in our country, firemen are shot at. And the police have to escort firemen and ambulances because of the hostility of certain neighborhoods towards, emergency providers. So I think about this, and to this day I'm still impressed that something happens, everyone's there. This great rescue team right in the city of Medford. Then I thought about man's problem and God's problem, because he had a world that was really lost, locked up in sin and darkness. And so I'm thinking, man, he is going to send a team. He's going to there's going to be angels, big brass trumpet. Listen, everybody, we're here to save you. And all of a sudden, when I see what God did, it looked like God lost his mind. In the biggest rescue of the ages, it appeared that God lost his mind. God sends a solitary person. To make it even more ridiculous in appearance, that person was a baby. Now, just a slight parenthesis. 2 years ago today, God sent another little baby to rescue his papa, Mr. Wesley Davis Amon. Yeah. Don't you dare give him a cupcake. Don't you dare give him a sugar thing. The kid is about torn the house down this week with all of the sugar and stuff. We had a good time. Think of God's rescue. I'm going to send a person. Because I talk to a lot of persons, also known as people. And many of us think, well, how can I save the world? You save the world like Jesus did by touching those in your world. God sends a baby to save us. In Galatians chapter 4, verses 4 and 5, it says, "But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his son, born of woman." Did I say son? He sent his own family? Probably was appropriate that I baptize my cousins. Come to faith through your family. Get strengthened spiritually through your family. Have uncles and aunts that walk strongly, without wavering, lifting our hands in pledge to the living God so that somebody can calibrate on your consistency. How many of you would like to be so consistent that people can set their spiritual clock to the meter of your walk with God? Well, I know what so-and-so is going to do today. They're going to be calling on God. I know that it's Sunday. They're going to be in church. I want to be predictable. I don't want to be capricious and untrackable. I want to be like Daniel. It's 3 times a day he's going to have his face up near that window calling out to God facing Jerusalem. And it says here that when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive adoption as sons. I love these verses. They're some of my favorite. Fullness of time. It wasn't a random time. It wasn't a random birth. It was God's rescue time with his rescue Son. In the fullness of time, a person born of a woman. He didn't send like a mega monster angel. I mean, we watch all those sci-fi, Captain America, the Marvel, and you've got, who's that? Thanos, like the ugly dude. I actually dated girls that looked just like Thanos. It was a rough time in my life. Or no, that's what they're saying about me now. But, you see these mega monster creatures and they're like, whoa, that would be impressive. And God didn't even do that. He sent a baby in a feed trough, born in a barn, and to save us. The Savior had to be one of us. There's the concept of the kinsman redeemer, the Goel, from the Old Testament, that the Redeemer had to be a near relative. Jesus had to be a near relative to buy us back from Satan. He had to share our humanity in order to redeem us. Hebrews chapter 2, 14 through 18 from the New Living Translation. I like the fluidity of how the NLT translated this. It says, because God's children are human beings. I have just been meditating on this for months. To get people back to just get happy in who you are. Do what you do. Barbecue evangelism. Hair clipping evangelism. When I get on hair clippers, even the lost call out to Jesus. Because God's children are human beings, say human beings. Made of flesh and blood, the Son also became flesh and blood. For only as a human being could he die, and only by dying could he break the power of the devil, who had the power of death. Only in this way could he set free all who have lived their lives as slaves to the fear of dying. We also know that the Son did not come to help angels. He came to help the descendants of Abraham. Therefore, it was necessary for him to be made in every respect like us, his brothers and sisters, so that he could be our merciful and faithful high priest before God. Then he could offer a sacrifice that would take away the sins of the people. Since he himself has gone through suffering and testing, he is able to help us when we are being tested. God sent a human being. Now, you say, well, Jesus was God. Jesus is fully God and he's fully man. I think sometimes if we just make him fully God, we don't relate to the humanity of Jesus. A lot of times then we just keep thinking that God should supernaturally save everybody than doing what he did through Jesus, which God incarnated himself in the person of Jesus to win the world. And when you got saved, God incarnated himself in you. He lives in you. You are the fleshly representation of the kingdom of God. I'm not in a hurry to go see Marty and Rick. I'd love to see so many that I've loved and are over. But I'm taking my time. Don't rush me, George. Either George, young George or elder George. But this is the blessed hope. We don't just molder in the grave. We're going to see him and we're going to be like him. We're going to live eternally. Those people that have died in the faith, we're going to be able to high five them, love them, and all of this is just going to be a breath. So what does it mean to be a person? Dictionary says it's a human being, whether an adult or child. It also means a human being as distinguished from an animal or a thing. That's why I really like human touch more than artificial intelligence. You know, Siri can be interesting for a few minutes, but I'm telling you, Kim is interesting for a whole lifetime. Persons. You're gonna hear the word person from me a lot in the next weeks. So that when you begin to understand personal evangelism, it's not a phony trumpet sound. It's going to be so natural. Because we're not looking for weird persons or altered persons or mutated persons. We're looking for real persons to tell what Jesus did for them. It's amazing what happens when you just tell your story and throw in some scriptures of what, you know, the Romans road or the way to come to Christ. So that was what the Lord became a person to save us. He personally came to be the sacrifice that could take away the sins of the world. His personal mission was to seek and to save the lost. Luke 19:10, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Seek you and I out. He came to seek us out. There's no need for low self-esteem. You were called by name. You weren't called, with number 73295, please step forward. No. He said, Amanda, I want you. How much? So much that he stretched forth his hands and he died. He'd rather die than live without you. I don't know about you. I know God is really busy. He's got a lot of sparrows and Buddy Acup's hairs falling out of his head and other things to count. But when I'm with him, it's like the universe stops and my dad's there. Just talking to me. So personally. And the Word became flesh. We were talking about the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. How many of you say, I'm glad he did? I'm glad to be here. Secondly, Christ came personally in the flesh to dwell and tabernacle among us, make his tent among us. John 1:14, and the Word, I underline this, became flesh and dwelt among us. And we have seen his glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. Jesus didn't do remote. I know there are so many ways to get the gospel out. You can do it through videos. You can do it through plays. You can do it through postings. But I will tell you my favorite. I like looking a lost person in the eye. And after sharing the gospel, say, you know, Linda, I believe it would be a good time for you to know the Lord. You see the tears well up. You're right. I don't feel worthy. Oh, trust me, you're not. And I wasn't. You mean God could forgive my sins, all of them? What do I need to do to prove to him I'm loyal now? Chill and enjoy. And all of a sudden, little Linda that was so strapped in sin, she's walked through the waters of baptism, and you'll never know where she came from. Thinking of you, Ryan. A couple years ago, this time was dreadful. Jillian was by his could have been graveside or bedside, which the doctors didn't think he'd live. And I remember all those times I'd go up and see you, how we didn't have the person. We had the body of Ryan. But then when Jesus healed you, like today he's up exhorting, isn't it good that God restored Ryan to personhood? He's got so much personality. Sometimes I just want to turn the battery off a little bit, just like, okay, Ryan, heard it. Person. Persons are special to God. And God as a person is special to you and I. That's what loyalty to God is being so amazed by what he did for you, for your story. Where your story and history, his story, came together in that merger. It should be so dynamic you can never get over it. Rescued. Christ personally invited his disciples to become fishers of men. He didn't send out a notice. He didn't just post a meeting. But he's walking by the Sea of Galilee. He sees two brothers. Simon, who's called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea. As they were fishermen, he said, "Follow me, I'll make you fishers of men." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. How did he know they were following him? Because they were there. Yeah. Brother Steve, I'll be at church in spirit. No, we don't need ghosts here. We need some flesh. Thank you guys for being here. And so those guys now are trucking along with Jesus, and they come by two other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, and he gives them the same invitation. They left their boat and their father and followed him. God has been very personally involved in the salvation of the world. Personally, not indifferently, not abstractly, not remotely, but personally. And that's why my life has been filled with personal evangelism. Tell the story. Spread the good news. You know, I'm watching the rioting in Portland, and I have a lot of history there. I see all the crud and stuff splattered on the park blocks. I remember street preaching in the park blocks at Portland State, right outside of Portland State. I remember hosting a Christian club on the campus of Portland State. I've had people curse me. I've had people say that they hate Christians, they hate God. But I will tell you this, there's no other name given under heaven whereby men must be saved. And I don't regret one time that someone cussed me. I remember I was having a Christian book fair. We were having clubs fair, and I had some Christian books out. And about 4 guys walked up and they said, "Do you believe this?" Shh, you know. And I said, "Yes, I do." And I said, "Someday you will too." And I was going to talk to them about the judgment. It was amazing. They lost their vigor and they walked away. Well, Brother Steve, what if people don't want to hear the message? Blind people don't enjoy mauve. They don't enjoy chartreuse. Deaf people can't hear. The gospel opens the eyes and the gospel opens the ears. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for the gospel, the proclamation, el mensaje, the message. There's power in the gospel. There's power to open blind eyes. There's power to open deaf ears. There's power to deliver from sin. The gospel is the good news still. Siempre, always, forever. Some of you are going to come out of here like enraged gorillas on fire, like your hair's on fire. And you're going to go out and tell the story. And I will tell you something. You'll love it. You always feel good when you've told the story. I remember times when I would be discouraged about my own walk with God. And I would go someplace and I would tell someone lost about Jesus. And I always knew, I'm really born again. It's not that bad. But if you're sitting around and all you do is, you're the kind of person, thank God I'm with just all Christians at my job. Really? You can't fulfill the Great Commission and you're thinking that's a good thing? I remember when I took a job at Wick's lumber company in Fremont, and I found out I was the only Christian. You know, I'm coming home to my new wife, hey, I've got them surrounded. Everywhere I turn, there's a heathen to talk to. Those guys loved me. My boss did. The guys I played softball with. They were genuinely sad when Kim and I moved away to go to Portland to prepare to plant the church here. And one of them later received Jesus. And he wrote me. He said, I had a heart attack. Your replacement as an outside salesman was George. And George was a devout believer. I prayed, God, put another me in there. So Steve number 2's name was George, and he led Don to God, who nearly died of a heart attack. I like being around sinners. They're less complicated than self-righteous Christians trying to justify their indifference. Well, who is my neighbor? Wow, that sounds like Pharisaical. If they breathe, they're your neighbor. If they breathe, if they can fog a mirror, they're your neighbor. They're worthy of the gospel being preached. Jesus desires us to personally take his message to others, just referencing the Great Commission. Go therefore. That could be translated this. You or y'all, go therefore. Make disciples of all nations. What's it mean? Tell the story. Recruit the willing into training. Walk with them. It's really neat to see people that come to Jesus and then, 10 years later you go on, were they really a sinner? Yeah, they were. Because they're so transformed. What are our takeaways today? Number one, God takes our needs and situations personally. There's a really rowdy scene in the movie Taken when Liam Neeson is like this Avenger guy. He's coming after these guys that had kidnapped his daughter to make her a sex slave thing. And he finally has the perpetrator in an elevator. And the guy said, I never took it personally. He pulls out his gun and said, I did though. Kaboom. That's what the second coming is going to be about. Is God took redemption seriously. The Bible says there's going to be the blood of the martyrs crying out for vengeance from under the throne. And when God comes over, don't worry about what's going on now. Lift up your heads. Your redemption draws near. He's going to kick over the table and said, I want to know how you treated my son, and I want to know how you treated my family, because I take it personally. So personal that he sent his son. So personal that the son walked among us. So personal that God recruited people to personally take the gospel. And that message is going now to invite you to learn to be a real person in evangelism. So some of the things we're going to have to just set aside. You're not going to have to grow your hair like Benny Hinn, guys. Some of you couldn't. Some of you shouldn't. Girls, you don't have to get white, flowery, long white gowns to be Catherine Coleman. If God had wanted you to be Catherine, you'd have been born that naturally. But he gave you a voice. So you personally can take these things seriously. The second takeaway was obvious. God sought to save the world. He sent a person. He sent Jesus. Number 3, Jesus came to train persons. Number 4, God desires us to personally tell the good news to others. Questions. Do you think about the personal nature of God toward you? David in Psalm 139, how great are the sum of God's thoughts toward me? Sam, do you ever think about how much your dad leans over the fence and roots for you? His thoughts. Josiah, do you know that you're specially designed to be the voice that you are for him? I know how much I think about Wesley and about my grandchildren. I know how much I think about my kids. I know how personal it is to me. That's why I can enjoy Liam Neeson movies. For you, it wasn't personal. For me, it was totally personal. And I look at God and I think about in darkness when I was lost, and that sweet voice invited me in. I want to take you on a great adventure, but you're going to have to let go of the world to have the kingdom. How many of you will raise your hand and say, I remember when the Lord got a hold of me? It was similar, right? It wasn't impersonal. You weren't saved under the group program. You were saved personally. Number 2, what should be our personal response to God's love? That might be rhetorical, but let me sum it up. what's been done to you, do for others. Someone loved me enough to tell me the story. I need to love people to tell them the story. Well, have you ever been hurt? I've been shattered. I've been shattered by guys that I led to the Lord that didn't follow up. But I'll tell you what, when I see Orion up in the sound booth, he was one of the worst kids ever in this church. God restored that sorry human, and now he's an angel. That's what makes it so worth it. It's transformation. I feel like we're just a family around a table right now. I feel that you're getting this. I feel that you're getting that inundation of the love of God. He's crazy about you. And we get so much misinformation on how to evangelize. But I find out when I'm just real. Like the day that Kim and I were at a conference in the mid-'80s, and we stayed at the Apple Inn up there near SeaTac, and a young guy sitting in a little booth next to us, and they had a continental breakfast, and we got talking, and he said, "What are you guys doing?" They said, "Well, we're attending a church conference at Christian Faith Center, Casey Treat's church over here in South Seattle," it was called at the time. He said, "Yeah," I said, "I'm living here because my wife and I are going through a divorce." And without changing voices, I shared the gospel, and I asked him if he would like Jesus to come in his life. He said, "Yes, I will." He prayed. I told him how to get to Christian Faith Center. A year later, when we were at the conference, he comes up and he grabs Kim and I. He said, "I'm so thankful you brought me to Jesus," and he gives us a big bottle of wine. And I said, "Well, we don't actually drink wine, but we do cook with it." So then, of course, we're trying to put a brown bag or something, over the wine. People are lost forever until they're found. And then they're found forever. How many of you are excited to study with us through the rest of this series and say, "Wow, you're not going to lay guilt on me, right? No need for guilt." I believe you're going to get psyched. I believe that evangelism is going to become a hobby, something that you really like doing. Could it be that God's will is that he still wants to save the world through persons? Right now, as we've been sharing about the goodness of Jesus, I would like you to join Marty and Rick and I and Dave and Tracy, all of us that said yes to Jesus. Say, what do I need to do to be a Christian? How clean should I make myself before God will take me? He prefers to do the cleaning himself. It takes a real sinner to make a real saint. If you can provide the sinner, he can provide the saint. And so coming to the Lord is to understand God so loved the world he gave his son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. And whoever, no matter how covered in sin and despair and failure, whoever would call on his name would not perish but have everlasting life. And so right now I believe, like every other week, every week that we have Sunday services, we give an opportunity for people to join God. He's done everything to join you, but he needs your voice saying, "I need your help, Lord. Lo siento, Señor, necesita tu ayuda. Ahora, Lord, I need your power right now. I need your forgiveness right now." If everyone would bow their head and close their eyes. If you're here today and you say, "You know what? You're really rocking my world with that teaching of Jesus, and I want in. I want to give my life to Jesus today, that he would forgive me of my sins, that he would allow me to be his child and follow his way. Right now, if you're here and you want to join God, raise your hand. I want to get an account and be able to pray with you. We're not going to pull you up here or anything, but we want to just say, okay, wow. If you're here and you say, I want God, raise your hand. Hallelujah.
That was such an awesome service, and
definitely.
we're so thankful that you joined us for Joy Church's online service wherever you're watching from today. We just want to remind you to make sure to follow us on social media, either on Instagram or on Facebook, and if you want any more information about Joy Church, you can always check out our website at joymedford.com.
Yeah, and to give, you can go to joymedford.com as well, or you can give via the PushPay app. Thank you for your faithfulness to give, and thank you for joining us today. We are so glad to have spent this time with you. Let's take the things that we've learned and let's put them into practice today. God bless you guys.